Margie here. I think we all know that hormones play a major role in our bones and overall health. And most people, when they think about hormones, think about taking hormone replacement therapy or HRT. But what most people don't realize is that there's so much that we can do in our daily activities and practices that will impact our hormones. And that's what we're going to focus on today with our very special guest, Dr. Lorraine Maita. And Dr. Maita is also known as the Hormone Harmonizer and Detoxifier. And she specializes in helping you have boundless energy, stable moods, a lean body, sharp, clear mind, strong bones, and balanced hormones, so you can feel like yourself again. She helps people understand how their lifestyle choices impact their mind, body, so that they can choose what makes them feel great. As a triple board certified and award-winning physician, writer, author, and speaker, her own struggles with hormone imbalances prompted her to become board certified in anti-aging, regenerative, and functional medicine and advanced endocrinology. Her programs have impacted over 120,000 people in each of 3 Fortune 100 companies, where she served as chief medical officer or medical director of global health services, as well as the thousands she's helped in her private practice. And I've known Dr. Maita for many years. And in today's talk, we really focus on things that you can do to really help optimize your hormones. So this interview is full of all sorts of great information. So stay tuned. Dr. Maita, welcome.
So good to be here with you, Margie. Nice to reconnect.
Yes, I was thinking about this today, that we actually first met. There's an integrative, at the hospital, they had an integrative lecture series many years ago. I don't even know if I was a health coach at that time. But anyway, it was such a long time ago. And I would always see you they were very good talks. It's too bad they don't really have them anymore. But I would always see you there. So that's how we met quite a while ago. So
I couldn't remember how we met. Thank you for reminding me that you've always been on my mind.
Yeah, that's how it is. I'd come and there you'd be sitting there. Yeah. So it's, so good to see you. And I love the work you do. And I'm so excited to really share this with the audience, because this piece that we're going to talk about today is confusing. And a lot of people don't realize that there's so much that they can do that can really have a positive effect on their bones. And you've been doing this for a long time. And
Yes.
so I think you can shed so much light onto the topic. So should we get started?
Yes, let's get started.
Okay. We're going to sort of work from the lowest denominator to the highest. And I think, when people hear about hormones, they immediately think they have to take bioidentical, or they think of, hormone replacement therapy. And yes, that's great. And we're going to mention that. But there's also so many other things that go into hormones. And that's what we're going to start with, so that the people who are like, I'm too old, I don't want to do that. And we'll talk about that. But I want everybody to know of all the things in their daily life they can do. So before we get there, just tell us why dealing with our hormones and prioritizing. You're called the hormone balance? The
Harmonizer.
Hormonizer.
And detoxifier.
I love I can't say it. It's a tongue twister. The hormonizer and detoxifier. I love that. So being the hormonizer, why don't you just tell us why this is so important for our bones, that we can't just ignore this piece?
Well, I tell people hormones are like the contractors. If you need a contractor to guide everything, right? If you want to build a house, they get the workers, they get the material, they say, do this, do that, turn this on, turn this off. That's what your hormones do. They get actually inside the nucleus of your cells and turn things on or turn things off. And they're responsible for building bone or breaking down bone. They're responsible for building your muscles and body and heart and brain up or breaking it down. So everything has to be in balance. And I say what you eat, what you drink, how much you sleep, how much you exercise, the stress you're under, the toxins you're exposed to, all of that affects your hormones. And my pet peeve is that some people I just want the hormones. Either the people are just give me the hormones. I don't want to do all those other things. Or practitioners just give people hormones and don't take into account the balance the intricacies, what the hormones are doing, how your body is handling it and processing it. So it's like making a cake. If you leave even one thing out, the cake's a flop. And that's really why looking at the whole person, and that's why I love functional medicine, because I have many women, I eat right, I exercise. Why are my bones thin? Well, there are a host of reasons why, and this is what I want to share with your audience, that there are things that you can do in your everyday life to improve your bones, even if your hormones are perfect, and even if you exercise and have calcium, right? Those are the three things that people know, but there's more to it. Otherwise, we wouldn't exist, right?
Yes, that's so true. I know those are the three: vitamin D,
And
calcium, and exercise. But they never really explain what exercise. But that's a whole nother talk. So it's interesting because there are people, I mean, and people will see that there's, you can order hormones online and you can do this. But I really don't think that's safe. I think there's so much, just like you said, you really need to work with someone who knows what they're doing. It's not that simple. And I love that you work with the whole person and take all these pieces and put it together. So that's why I'm having you here today. So why don't we start with what you've seen? Like, what can people do? What areas? You want to start with toxins? Because I know the detoxifier, I think a lot of people sort of poo-poo this discussion, like, oh, come on, really? It's not on the forefront. And even if they're working with some functional medicine doctors, it may not be something that even gets into the picture until down the road. But yet it's something everybody can do every day and start small steps to really detoxify. So tell us what toxins you see have the biggest negative impact on our bones.
The biggest the toxins that have the biggest negative impacts are cadmium, lead, and plasticizers, like with BPA, phthalates, and plastics. So cadmium is like the new smoking. We know that cigarette smoke can affect your bones because it stops the cells that build up bones. It stops them from building the bones, and it promotes the cells that break down the bones. Now, it used to be we got cadmium from tobacco smoke, but now people don't realize that when they go and they buy their meats and it says fed an all vegetarian diet, no antibiotics. Well, you know what? That vegetarian diet is grain that's sprayed with a pesticide, an herbicide that has cadmium in it. So the whatever meat you had ate that, and then you get the cadmium, right? And the cadmium inhibits alkaline phosphatase, which is produced by the bones to the bone cells that build bone to deposit calcium into the bones. So then no matter how much calcium you have, you've got cadmium there. It's not going to go where you want it to go. It's not going to go into your bones to make your bones strong. So that's why I'm a big believer in eating organic. And look, these are marketing terms. Oh, all natural vegetarian diet. Well, you know what? Metals in the environment are natural, but they're not good for you, right? They're on the periodic table of chemistry. They're all natural, but that means nothing. So just forget about anything that says all natural. You've got to be an educated consumer. And that's why you have to make sure whatever you're eating when it comes to any kinds of meats is organic. It's really important for your bones. So make sure they're getting organic feed, not just all natural, because the bad stuff is natural too, right? And cigarette smoke. Luckily, we're here in the United States now that there's smoke-free environments, but cigarette smoke was the big producer of cadmium, and that's where we got most of our cadmium. Now it's just from food sources. So people don't necessarily realize that in New England, the New England coast and the Great Lakes are polluted with cadmium. So if you eat shellfish from those areas, oysters and scallops and other shellfish, you're getting a boatload of cadmium. And cadmium's in the air, in the soil, in the water. So if you're really vulnerable, I mean, you can't do all of this, but it's easy to eat most things organic. They're everywhere. Maybe if you're really vulnerable, get an air filter because it is in the air. And one of the really weird things that it came across is that cadmium is in children's jewelry from China. One contained 91% cadmium, and children put the jewelry in their mouth. I know when I was younger, I used to wear cheap jewelry, right? And I got rashes because of the nickel and the cadmium. And nickel and cadmium also increase the risk of breast cancer. So avoid the cheap Chinese jewelry, right? Eat some organic and filter your air if you're in an area that's very polluted. And there are online apps that can tell you what your air quality is like and what your water quality is like.
Wow. Okay. So a couple things here. All right.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah. So let's just clarify. So in terms of eating organic, and what about grass fed if we're eating beef or
grass fed is better because that's going to mean you're going to have more omega-3 fats than omega-6 fats. So that decreases inflammation, and inflammation's the root cause of almost all illness, and inflammation damages bone. So that's why I always say, yes, it's better to have grass-fed organic. When we're talking about cadmium, it's the organic part. When we're talking about inflammation, it's the grass-fed part.
second part? Okay. So you just threw me for a loop here because I'm always into wild fish, always get wild instead of the farm raised. So what you're saying is, though, scallops and lobster from Maine is going to be full of cadmium?
Yeah, from the
Wow.
New England waters and also the Great Lakes. So the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch actually will tell you where the best fish are and what waters are contaminated, so you know where to get them from. Even if you have farm raised, if they're raised in those waters, there's going to be a problem. And that's why I'm a detoxifier, because we all have to be in a chronic state of detoxification. And I'm a big believer in N-acetyl cysteine and glutathione. N-acetyl cysteine turns into glutathione, but 20% of people are deficient in the enzymes or have slow enzymes that make glutathione or recycle glutathione. So I actually do both. I have N-acetyl cysteine and I take glutathione because I've had mercury toxicity 3 times in my life. And I realized when I did my genetics, the reason why. I said, I eat clean, right? But I can't make glutathione. I can't detoxify well. And those are the underlying things. So these are easy things that you can do. And sauna is also a wonderful, wonderful thing you can do to detoxify. And I'm big on fiber. Fiber is so important to feed your microbiome, to remove toxins, and it's food for the microbiome to eat the fiber, make short chain fatty acids. Those are your sentinels. Those are the microbiome protects you against the outside world. They're the sentinels that say, minerals you get in, bad bacteria, toxins you stay out. So if you don't feed them, and if you don't keep the cell wall of one cell is between you and the outside world in your gut. If that is not fed with the right food, which is short chain fatty acids, your gut breaks down, and that's really where you get an influx of toxins. Your immune system gets thrown off. You get food sensitivity. So fiber is so important, and it's so important for hormone balance.
Wow, you just said so many things. So let's just go back. They're all so good. What I love, though, is that there are things we can do. Let's start with the NAC, the N-acetyl. I never pronounce it right. I just call it NAC. And the glutathione. Can you just explain to people if they don't know what glutathione is in the body and how important it is? You want to just explain the two of those in really simple terms for those people who aren't aware of it?
N-acetylcysteine is an amino acid that gets converted into glutathione. We've used that during viral infection outbursts because it's antiviral. It actually has been studied that it can abort the flu and decrease inflammation, and it makes your mucus more silky, and it's not as thick. So N-acetylcysteine has been very, very useful during outbreaks of viruses, right? It gets converted to glutathione, which is the master antioxidant and master detoxifier. It allows your body to get rid of the toxins. And if you oxidize, oxidation causes inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of almost all illness. So glutathione decreases those oxidation, and it also recycles all your other antioxidants like vitamins A, vitamin C, vitamin E, because those things, vitamin C doesn't last in your body long. You need to recycle it. And glutathione recycles all your antioxidants, and it helps you get rid of these toxins. And these toxins, they call them toxins because they are toxic. They're toxic to your immune system, your hormone system, your nervous system, and your bones.
Yeah. So is there anyone you would say should not take this? Is there any possibility that there are people
Yes.
who are listening like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go right on NAC and glutathione? Is there people who should be aware that, no, this is not right for you?
Yeah. Some people are sensitive to sulfa. So if you're sensitive to sulfa, usually you know it. And then those people, that's not a good thing because they're both sulfa based.
Okay, very important. And is there a certain form you like? Most of the NAC is pill based, but I've seen glutathione that you can also put on the skin. Do you have a preference?
I like the liposomal glutathione because it's much more easily absorbed. And there are a lot of formulations out there. And I know like Designs for Health, Quicksilver, Seeking Health, all have very, very good forms of liposomal glutathione. That's my favorite.
Is there a certain dose for the average person that you recommend, or it depends?
It depends. So when it's for the general public, I say take what's recommended on the label. If I see somebody individually, I'll know when to increase the dose or not. But I would say each manufacturer knows their absorption. So go by what the manufacturer tells you to do, because I can't give individual advice, but the manufacturers know what's safe for the general public.
Yeah, that's such a good point because, they do know, and that's your best bet because, everything's different. Now, I have a question for you. Okay, so cadmium. So now the person who's living on scallops, right? So do you have your patients test for cadmium?
Yes, I do heavy metal testing. Oftentimes I'll do a nutrient test that looks at, your amino acids, your fatty acids, your vitamins, your minerals. It also can give us an indication of toxins. And then if it comes up somewhat higher, then I'll do a metals test. And I provoke, meaning metals, any toxin that you've been exposed to since birth gets stored in your fat and your bone marrow. And it breaks down bone. So lead, big time, 90% of the body burden of lead is in your bones. So it's like saying, oh, I tested your blood, there's nothing in your blood. Well, it's hidden in your bones. So I use something called DMSA that actually is a chelator. It grabs the metals, pulls them out of your bone, so you get a sense of the body burden. So basically, I have people take, pee in a cup. When they get up in the first thing in the morning, they take an amount of DMSA that's needed for their weight, and they collect urine for 6 hours. And then I can see the metals in there. And if you did it without the DMSA, I've done it several times. So it's normal, right? But after the DMSA, sometimes it's off the charts. So I see mercury and lead big time, and cadmium, not as much, but I do see it quite a bit.
And then you work with them. You're the detoxifier. So
Yeah.
you work with them. And how long? I mean, that's a long process, though. What have you seen? Because you've been doing this for so many years. That's something that I also love about you. You have the experience. It's not that you're just trying this. You've been doing this for such a long period. So what have you seen with people who, how long does it typically? I guess there's no typical, but
It's,
yeah.
sometimes for most people, it's about 3 months of doing some kind of detox where using a chelator, but some people are super, super sensitive and they have to go slower. I know the first time, post-surgery, because I had 2 operations 4 days apart for my shoulder and then my foot and then my shoulder, and everything is preserved with mercury, right? All those IVs and injectables. And I never had any medication. This was the first time, right? And first time I did actually a rectal glutathione. It's hard to get, and it's also not very pleasant, but I got through that very quickly because post-surgery, I could read a sentence and not remember what I read. And I would watch a movie and say, what just happened here? I mean, it affects your brain. You're not just your bones, but your brain, your hormone system, your immune system. And I see some people that have, neurological issues, and I immediately go to toxins, right? So I have some people that, because they're so sensitive, it takes them much longer because we have to dose it lower. And other people, we get it out within a few months.
And what changes do you see when people who do show that they have these, what do you see?
The memory gets sharp, they get energetic, they lose the aches and pains, their hormones are more balanced. Then they start to build bone, because you can't build bone when you have a toxin in there, sitting in there, breaking it down. And it's pretty amazing. I can speak for my own. I was a mess. I was actually a mess. And that's how I studied toxins for 25 years. I was in occupational and environmental medicine. It made you afraid to breathe and drink and eat anything. But the thing is, you decrease what's coming in. That's the principle. You decrease the source and you increase getting it out. And the sauna, N-acetyl, cysteine, glutathione are your trilogies. And with some people, I'll use the DMSA and other chelators, or charcoal or chlorella. Some are better than others. It depends upon the toxin. But I find that people just get their life back. That's what they tell me. I got my life back.
Wow.
I had somebody who had long COVID and her brain wasn't working. She went out on disability, and we had to be very gentle with her because everything was just affecting her. And, the last thing you get to is the metals. You have to prepare your body. Your microbiome has to be good. You have to be stable. You have to have the right nutrients. And having a lot of minerals is very important. Good, clean minerals. Minerals are grown in the soil that's contaminated. So that's why you want to make sure you buy a good quality supplement, because especially minerals and any kind of rice protein filled with lead. So make sure you go to a company that tests, because many companies don't. And, a lot of my patients will say, oh, I bought this and I got it on Amazon and it was so much less expensive. Well, you get what you pay for. First of all, Amazon has so many counterfeits. There are a lot of companies suing them because they're people are using their product labels and it's not their product. And I mean, literally, a patient showed me a bottle of pills and he emptied it out and he said, is this what it's supposed to look like? And it looked like torn up cardboard. I mean, that was obvious. I said, this is not right. Where'd you buy it? Of course, he bought it on Amazon, right? And but when you get a capsule that looks like every other capsule, you don't know what you're getting. Just read the labels and know, does your manufacturer test, and who's their third-party tester? Is it their own company? They usually have their own company that they name a different name, and they do the testing, and it's not really a third party. So be careful where you buy. There are reputable companies there, and there are people who understand supplements and in the functional medicine space that can guide you into getting the right stuff.
Oh, well, I have another question. A lot of people say, oh, I just got it done with the hair analysis. What's your feeling on that?
I had to study that because I was in charge of big companies, and
wow.
I never found the validity in that. I mean, we were doing it for some other reasons, but the studies show more with blood. I go by the studies, and when I was in charge of 3 different companies, each which had a population of 120,000 people. So I couldn't just do any old test. I had to thoroughly research everything that I did. And there's the most research and study on blood.
Yeah. So
But
if people
you chelate.
And this is one of those things you really do need to work with a practitioner. It's not something you can just, do yourself in terms of the detoxing. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that because I try everything, and I want to try to make it simpler for people. So I tried some over the counter stuff and then I did testing on myself and it just didn't work as well. And it's so prolonged. So I really feel like if there's something wrong, you need to go deeper and you need to work with somebody because they'll know different chelators are good for different things. And you have to know that, as much as I love chlorella, it's not as binding as some of the other things. And you definitely have to replace your minerals. The minerals are going to displace these toxins.
Hey, Margie here. As a physical therapist, I know firsthand how important exercise is for our bones, overall health, and happiness. And unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion on what exercises are safe and effective for people with osteoporosis. That's why I created this handout that contains a 30-minute video where I explain the concepts so you understand the do's and don'ts when it comes to exercise. And this is important because this way you can go into any class and know what you should be doing and what you should avoid. Because too many people are doing exercises that actually increase their risk of spinal fractures. I also included videos of me demonstrating effective balance, posture, and weight-bearing exercises you can put into your day right away. So all you need to do to access this handout, it's free, is go to tinyurl.com/osteoporosis exercises. So it's tinyurl.com, again, /osteoporosis exercises, or you can click the link in the show notes. Now back to the show. Okay, so toxins, we need to address it. I'm so big into root causes, that the way people really get better and stay better and and I always say, look at a diagnosis of osteoporosis as a blessing in disguise, because when they figure out the root causes, they address them, everything gets better. So this certainly is a piece that can't be missed. And is there some other signs and symptoms that you said about the headaches and the dizziness? And are there other major signs and symptoms that would say you might have a problem needing to be detoxed?
You know what? I detox everybody, but I do a gentle detox. I'm not going to do a metals detox. That's pretty specific. But before I give anyone hormones, I make sure their body is ready for hormones. We're exposed to over 200 chemicals a day. And especially women, all our personal care products, a lot of our cosmetics have lead in them. Lead is the worst thing for your bones. Jewelry, we wear jewelry, and, the paint in older houses. If you have an old house, if you have acidic water, it corrodes the pipes, and some of the pipes in the water system, not maybe your pipes, but other pipes have lead in them. So I prepare the body because we want to decrease inflammation. We want the immune system to be calm and balanced, and we want to unburden the liver. Because if you're going to give somebody hormones, their gut has to be good, their microbiome has to be good, they have to have good bile flow, they have to eliminate, because people who think they move their bowels once every 3 days and that's normal, it's not. That's a big way to get rid of toxins. And you have to make sure the liver is unburdened. So I make sure that we decrease inflammation in the gut by decreasing inflammatory foods. We do a little bit of an experiment of taking out the most inflammatory foods for 2 weeks while giving a shake to heal the gut and calm the immune system down, and herbs to detoxify the liver. I have to tell you that we had this medical symptom questionnaire with probably over 50 symptoms. And people can have any of those symptoms, from either toxins, inflammation, food sensitivities. People in 2 weeks feel good to great. And I do this on everyone. And as much resistance as I get from some people, they said it's the best thing they ever did, because they feel light, they lose weight, they lose the bloat, they feel clear, they get rid of reflux, they get rid of aches and pains and tingling and headaches and brain fog. So when even you say toxins, they can affect just about everything in your nervous system, your immune system, and your hormone system. So a simple process, that I usually eliminate gluten, dairy, soy, corn, and eggs. I do a little bit more than that. But those things, if you eliminate them for 2 weeks and heal your gut and detoxify, and then you add the food back, if you get any of those symptoms back, that food is causing inflammation.
Okay, so this is fantastic. Let's move on. What else we could talk forever. We could be
Oh,
4
God.
hours here because you are such a wealth of information. Okay, so we've dealt with the toxins piece. And again, that's the food you eat, the air you breathe. And I think that's a good point because, the air quality isn't great. I know I use the Air Doctor. I love it. I think it's so very helpful. But let's continue. Let's continue about, should we talk about cortisol or what do you want to say? What do you think of
Well,
that?
yeah. I mean, people think, everything having to do with hormones is estrogen. And by the way, when you start losing bones and you start losing in perimenopause, progesterone is just as important for your bones as estrogen because it helps the bone building cells. And women who don't ovulate, women who have irregular periods, they're going to have more bone loss than others. So we need the balance of estrogen, progesterone. One's the gas pedal, the other's the brake. But we're all subject to distress. And that's really where cortisol comes in. And stress is not just mental. It's physical, emotional, chemical. So anything that causes distress on the body can raise cortisol. And what does cortisol do? It's the major ager. It breaks down muscle, it breaks down bone, it raises blood sugar, raises cholesterol, raises your heart rate, and it leaches, it breaks down your bones. And it also suppresses all those other hormones that are trying to build you up. So everything is about balance. If you have more of the hormone that breaks you down, which is cortisol, all the other hormones that are going to build you up are going to be suppressed. So getting that's why also every single person that comes through my practice gets a test for cortisol. And they'll say, I'm not stressed. Meanwhile, the cortisol is through the roof or rock bottom. So too high or too low is no good. Because when cortisol is flatline, you're more likely to get autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. It's still not good for your bones. It's like having a driverless car without the right AI, right? You have nothing controlling your immune system, your hormone system, or your nervous system. It's just flatline. And you really need to take care of that. And that takes more radical care. That's why I try to get people when the cortisol's high to de-stress and to find the root cause of the stress, the distress. So which could be worry. Yeah, could be worry, anxiety, depression. It could be toxins, adverse food reactions, inflammation or infection, nutritional excess or deficiency, sleep deprivation, sedentary lifestyle. All of that affects your hormone system, your immune system, your nervous system, and your bones, and your bones. And that simple process that I take people through can get to the root of a lot of that. And then measuring your cortisol is so important because it's going to affect everything.
Do you do it then? What do you like? Do you like blood a couple times a day? Do you like the dried urine? What's your favorite?
For cortisol, I like saliva. That's actually the gold standard for cortisol. So you spit in a tube 4 times in a day. You see a curve should start high in the morning, go lower and lower, and at night be its lowest. And I also see people at night where the cortisol curve is flipped. It goes up at night, and then they can't get to sleep. So I like phosphatidylserine to lower cortisol. I use stress management because I teach people something called HeartMath. I don't know, have you?
Oh, I know HeartMath. Yes, I'm not in HeartMath, but I know HeartMath very well. Yes, I think it's fantastic. And I think it's just a wonderful biofeedback and it works. It really works.
Yeah. And it's quick and it's easy and you can do it anytime with any person, anywhere.
Do you do that virtually as well? If they have yeah, that's great.
You don't need a device. I was using HeartMath when it was out on cassette tapes. That's how old I am, right? Cassette tapes. So they
the same age as you, or not older,
I'm young at heart. I do anti-aging. So the thing is, I think that you don't need the app. I have the computer program because I did that from when I did executive physicals, and it's miraculous because you can see if you think you're relaxed and your curve is like a little choppy, right? And it's sort of like there's tension there. Like it's your parasympathetic, which is the relaxed immune system, versus the sympathetic, which is the stress and fight and flight. If they're balanced, you have a really smooth curve. So when I did HeartMath on somebody who was a big meditator, she said, bring it on. She still had a little choppy curve. And I said, you're relaxed? Yes. When you do HeartMath, you do the deep yogic breathing, deep and slow. Focus on your heart and focus on something, somewhere, someplace that you're deeply grateful for or really appreciate. And you know what? I said, think of your dog. I know she loved her dog. The results were so miraculous. You saw like her whole facial expression, she was glowing. She was smiling. And then the curve was smooth and beautiful, right? That's the balance.
It's funny. That's my favorite technique that I teach in my happiness class.
Oh, that's so great. Well, I know we have a lot of synergies.
Put your hands on your heart and think of something that brings love and gratitude. And I love a lot of times, if you can't think of it, think of an animal that you love, but that puts you in your heart center. And it just instantly, I have people do that throughout the day because it's so powerful. Such a simple technique like that is so powerful. I love that you integrate that. So
absolutely, because that gets cortisol into its right place.
Yeah.
And then what you eat, avoid the sugar and too much saturated fat, because that also affects bones because sugar causes inflammation. Saturated fat causes inflammation. So you want to decrease inflammation because that's not just good for your bones, it's good for everything, right?
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, you're talking my language because and people I don't know if you've seen this in your practice, but what I see, people are so stressed. Are they eating exactly the right food? Are they see me? Are they doing exactly the right exercise? Not realizing, take a breath, get into your heart center. This cortisol is destructive on your bones. So I love that that's a part of what you do. So before we end though, I really do want you to just mention, because I know you do so much with hormones. We're not going to go into a whole thing, but just briefly, because there are a lot of people in this community who are, why don't you just tell about how good it is, Harry, early on, if you can, what hormones do for the bones early on, just very briefly. And then also, a lot of people say, oh, it's too late for me. So I would just like you to share your experience because you've been doing this for so many years and working with so many people. Just give them the idea. We don't have to go in detail, but just, what you've seen.
Well, what I've seen is, women who do everything right are still losing bone. And perimenopause, you lose bone faster than you actually do during menopause because we need progesterone. So during perimenopause, you have estrogen, but very little progesterone. So getting progesterone up is important and getting the balance. During menopause, you lose estrogen and progesterone, and that's extremely important for your bone, your brains, your lipids, and inflammation as well. So that we make sure everything is in the right place. And you also need testosterone. Some women feel that testosterone really strengthens bones and has people with low testosterone will have weaker bones and they have less bone mineral density. So we try to get all that right. But then cortisol is the king of all hormones or the queen of all hormones. And that is going to affect all of the other hormones. And ladies, if you want thyroid for your weight loss, if it's too much thyroid, it turns off TSH. And that TSH is important for making bone. So everything has to be in balance. And different stages of your life, even if you have PCOS or if you have very irregular periods or anovulatory cycles, meaning you don't ovulate, you need to get those hormones looked at and checked. Because if you're missing one and if it's not the right amount, you're in trouble.
Okay. And then you use them in terms of someone who's 10 years. You want to just quickly say your thoughts on people at different, someone who's 10 years post-menopause or someone who's at menopause in terms of, I know you're a big believer in if it's done properly, the bioidentical hormones, but what have you seen when you when people who are on these.
You get the most benefit the sooner you start, right? The sooner you start, if you're under 60 within 10 years of menopause, that's where you get the most benefit. But that doesn't mean that if you're over 60 or more than 10 years past menopause, that you're not going to get benefit. In fact, there was a recent study that came out that you can benefit if you're over 60. And you can build bone if you're over 60. It's just a little bit slower because you've lost more and you have to work to regain that. So it is safe to take. There's only, there are a few contraindications. You always have to speak to your doctor. Like if you have breast cancer, if you have the BRCA gene, if you've had a, pulmonary embolism or deep vein thrombosis, even though they don't cause that, you had the predisposition for that. So I've been giving hormones to women that are older and they love them. They love them. It's just you have to manage expectations. It's just a little bit slower, and you might not feel the difference right away, but it's working internally as well as externally and how you feel and look.
So, Dr. Maita, how can people? Well, first of all, there's a couple ways you can work with her. Why don't you just tell people? I didn't even know that people could work with you from other. Dr. Maita lives close to me, which is so great. So New Jersey crew. She's right. But just tell people how they can. How do you work with people?
Well, I work with them one-on-one in my medical practice, which is Vibrance for Life. But I'm only licensed in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Florida, right? But I do a lot of teaching. Like I can get you 90% there and do everything but prescribe through my online courses through the Feel Good Again Institute. You have to put the and Institute, otherwise you get a drug rehab center, right? But it's the Feel Good Again Institute. And I have a lot of classes that I do. And we have coaching, and we have somebody that takes you through that detoxification process where 80% of people feel good to great. And we have one that helps you lose weight or not lose weight. So there's both virtual and supported coaching, and then there's one-on-one medical care.
And tell her, there's one course that you have that I think my community is going to love, and it's very reasonably priced. And tell them about the cortisol course. I mean, it has another name, but to me, I'm such a believer in that. As you talked about how important dealing with cortisol is. So I loved the modules. I loved what you covered. So why don't you just share a little bit?
Cortisol, conquer cortisol, like I said, that's going to affect everything else. And all the little things that we talked about today, stress, toxins, adverse food reactions, inflammation, nutritional excess deficiency, sleep, those things are covered in that course. And you get assessments, you get practical strategies, you get resources, and you're going to have the knowledge, the courage, and the confidence to make the changes that you need to make, and to also ask for what you want. So if you're somewhere else and I can't prescribe for you, you know exactly what to ask for. You know exactly what to ask for. And people love those courses.
Yeah, so I made it easy for people. I'll have the link to everything, all your information in the show notes. However, I made it easy because sometimes you're listening. And so I made a tiny url.com/conquer, CONQUER, cortisol, CORTISOL. So to make that, or you can just go to the link in the show notes to see what that course is all about. But when I was reviewing it, I just thought, wow, this looks really great. And they move at their own pace, correct, with that course?
Yeah.
So it's pre-done. You can just sort of fit it in wherever you want. How long is each module?
The videos are short, anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, but it's when you get into the resources and you focus on what matters to you most. And what I'm doing is every month I have a free call on Zoom where people can just call in and ask any questions, anybody in my community, so that if you're taking one of my courses and you have questions about it,
I love that.
You can send your questions in, and I do a monthly webinar for the community.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's where I feel all the magic gets done. And I have and that's where we can really help people on their journey virtually when they're not with us one-on-one. Oh, Dr. Maita, this is so good. You and I have to get together since we live so close.
Yeah.
And, we can talk more, but you really shed some light on so many important issues and given people people have the power. They have the power to make such big differences in their lives, their bones, their overall health. Is there any last minute thing you want to say before we end?
Well, I always tell people to have some fun. You can check off all the boxes and do everything right. But if you're not filled with joy and, as you would say, happiness, what's the point, right? So have some fun, because that will lower your cortisol too. Get outside, get in nature, lower your cortisol, have some fun, laugh, That's what life is all about.
I love it, and everybody can see why we get along.
Yeah.
We're on the same page. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's really been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Maita as much as I did, and now have a better understanding of the daily practices that you can do to optimize your hormones. All the links Dr. Maita talked about will be in the show notes, including the link to her class, Conquering Cortisol, or you can also just go to tinyurl.com/conquercortisol. And also make sure to check out my handout on osteoporosis exercises. Lots of great videos there that you can put into your day right away. And just make sure to think about your bones. And thank you again for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.